Scary telling.
I remember the day the gray envelope arrived like it was yesterday. It was a typical Tuesday afternoon, and my wife and I were sorting through the mail. I had just finished opening the fourth and fifth letters when I saw it, tucked between a utility bill and a book of coupons. It was addressed to me, with my full name printed neatly on the front. I felt a sense of unease wash over me as I tore open the envelope and saw the familiar seal of government correspondence. Inside was a letter informing me that I had been selected for decimation. I felt my heart sink as I read the words, trying to make sense of what they meant. My wife looked over my shoulder and read the letter too, her face turning pale. "Oh my God," she whispered, "what does this mean? Why would they choose you?" I shook my head, feeling numb. "I don't know," I said, "but we have to figure out what to do next." We spent the rest of the evening talking about the letter and what it meant for our future. We tried to come up with any possible explanation for why I had been chosen, but nothing made sense. I couldn't think of anything I had done to deserve this fate. Over the next few days, I tried to push the letter to the back of my mind and go about my normal routine. But it was always there, nagging at me, reminding me that my time was running out. I started to research decimation and what it entailed, but the information I found was sparse and frightening. It seemed that the government had created a lottery system to choose people for decimation, and there was no way to appeal or avoid it once you had been selected. I felt a sense of hopelessness and despair wash over me as I realized that my fate was sealed. I couldn't believe that this was happening to me, that I would have to leave my wife and everything I knew behind. As the days turned into weeks, I felt a growing sense of dread and anxiety. Every time the mail arrived, I felt my heart skip a beat, wondering if there would be another gray envelope waiting for me. But there never was. Just bills and coupons and advertisements. Life went on even as I waited for the end to come. Eventually, I marked the date of my decimation in my calendar and tried to prepare myself for what was to come. I spent time with my wife, trying to make the most of the time we had left together. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life was slipping away, that I was running out of time. The gray envelope had changed everything, and there was no going back. The day of my decimation arrived, and I woke up feeling numb and terrified. I knew that this was the end, that I would soon be injected with a lethal syringe and that my life would be over. I tried to steel myself for what was to come, but every time I thought about it, my heart started racing and my palms grew sweaty. I knew that I couldn't avoid my fate, but I still clung to a small shred of hope that maybe, somehow, things would turn out differently. As I got dressed and ate breakfast with my wife, I tried to act normal, to pretend that everything was fine. But we both knew that this was the end, that I would soon be leaving her behind. After breakfast, I double-checked the address on the letter and kissed my wife goodbye. I tried to find some comfort in her words of encouragement, but my mind was already elsewhere. I arrived at the decimation center early and waited in my car, watching the clock tick down to my appointed time. I tried to keep my mind occupied with thoughts of anything else, but I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that was slowly creeping up on me. At 1:20 p.m., I stepped out of my car and made my way to the registration booth outside the main doors. The man behind the desk examined my identity document and asked me for my name, birth date, and address before letting me inside. I entered the long room and saw the rows of chairs, already filled with men, women, and children waiting for their turn to be decimated. I took a seat in the last chair, feeling a sudden surge of fear as I realized that I was next. As I waited, I watched as Dr. Janet P. and her team prepared the syringes for each person seated in the room. The atmosphere was tense and silent, and the only sound was the shuffling of feet and the occasional rustling of papers. I tried to calm myself, to find some peace in the effervescent afternoon sunlight streaming through the window. But my mind was racing with questions, wondering what would happen to my wife, and if anyone would remember me after I was gone. As the injections began, I watched in horror as one by one, the people seated across from me fell gently asleep. I wondered what it felt like to die like that, to have your life taken away so quickly and efficiently. And then it was my turn. Dr. Janet P. approached me, and I felt a sudden surge of fear wash over me. I wanted to run, to scream, to do anything to avoid what was about to happen. But I knew that I couldn't. I had been chosen, and there was no escaping my fate. As Dr. Janet P. injected me with the syringe, I felt a cold sensation spread through my body. I looked up at her, expecting to see a look of sadness or regret, but all I saw was a smile. And then the world went black. When I opened my eyes, I was lying on a bed in a small room. I felt groggy and disoriented, but as my senses started to return, I remembered what had happened. I had been decimated. I sat up, feeling a sudden surge of fear and panic. But as I looked around, I realized that something was off. The room was bare and sterile, with no windows or decorations. And standing in the corner was Dr. Janet P., watching me with a strange smile on her face. "Good afternoon," she said, walking over to me. "How are you feeling?" I tried to speak, but my throat was dry and scratchy. "What happened?" I managed to croak. "You've been decimated," she said, her smile widening. "You're in a recovery room now, but you should be feeling better soon." I looked around the room again, feeling a growing sense of unease. "Where is everyone else?" I asked. "The other people who were decimated." Dr. Janet P. just smiled. "They're gone," she said. "But don't worry about them. They're in a better place now." I felt a sudden surge of anger and fear. Something was not right here, and I couldn't shake the feeling that Dr. Janet P. was hiding something from me. "What's going on?" I demanded. "Why did you do this? Why did you kill all those people?" Dr. Janet P. just laughed. "Kill?" she said. "No, no, no. We don't kill people here. We decimate them. It's all very civilized, you see." I felt a sense of revulsion wash over me as I realized that she was serious. This was all just part of some sick, twisted system, a way for the government to control the population and keep them in line. "How can you be so cold?" I said. "How can you kill people like this, without any remorse?" Dr. Janet P. just shrugged. "It's all for the greater good," she said. "We have to make sacrifices to ensure the survival of our society. And you, Mr. Willoughby, were just one of those sacrifices." I felt a sudden surge of despair wash over me as I realized that this was the end. There was no hope for me, no way to escape this nightmare. I had been chosen, and now I was just another statistic, another victim of a cruel and inhumane system. As Dr. Janet P. walked out of the room, I lay back on the bed and closed my eyes. I didn't want to think about what had happened, didn't want to face the reality of my situation. But as I lay there, I couldn't help but wonder how many others would suffer the same fate as me. How many more would have to die before this madness was over? And was there any hope for a better future, or was this the end of everything? As I lay in the recovery room, I knew that I had to find a way out of this place. I couldn't stay here, couldn't be a part of this twisted system any longer. I had to escape. I started to explore the room, searching for any way out. The walls were bare and sterile, with no windows or doors except for the one that Dr. Janet P. had used to enter and exit the room. But as I searched, I noticed something strange. The room was not completely empty. In the corner, there was a small metal cabinet, locked and secured with a padlock. I approached the cabinet, feeling a surge of hope. Maybe there was something inside that could help me escape, something that Dr. Janet P. had overlooked. With shaking hands, I tried to open the padlock. It was difficult, but after a few minutes of trying, I managed to crack the combination and open the cabinet. Inside, I found a set of scrubs, a pair of sneakers, and a few other basic supplies. It wasn't much, but it was enough to help me blend in and escape. I quickly changed into the scrubs and sneakers, feeling a sense of relief as I discarded my suit and tie. I felt like a different person, like I had shed my old identity and taken on a new one. As I approached the door, I could hear the sounds of footsteps and voices in the hallway. Dr. Janet P. and her team were moving around, going about their work. I took a deep breath and opened the door, stepping out into the hallway. I felt exposed and vulnerable, but I had to keep moving. I walked quickly, trying to blend in with the other staff members as I made my way towards the exit. I could feel the eyes of the other workers on me, but I tried to act calm and professional. As I approached the exit, I could feel my heart racing with fear and excitement. I was so close to freedom, so close to escaping this nightmare. But just as I reached the door, I heard a voice behind me. "Excuse me, sir," Dr. Janet P. said. "What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be in this area." I froze, feeling a surge of panic wash over me. I had been caught. But then, something unexpected happened. Dr. Janet P. smiled at me, a strange glint in her eye. "Actually," she said, "I could use your help. We're short-staffed today, and I could use an extra hand in the decimation room. Would you be willing to assist?" I felt a sudden surge of relief and disbelief. Was she really asking me to help with the very thing that I had been trying to escape? But then, I realized that this was my chance. If I could just get close enough to Dr. Janet P., I might be able to find a way to escape. "Of course," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'd be happy to help." Dr. Janet P. smiled again, and together, we made our way back to the decimation room. As we walked, I tried to think of a plan, a way to escape this nightmare once and for all. As I entered the decimation room with Dr. Janet P., I felt a surge of fear and revulsion wash over me. I knew that I couldn't go through with this, couldn't be a part of this twisted system any longer. But I also knew that I had to be careful. Dr. Janet P. was dangerous, and I didn't want to give away my plan too soon. As we approached the row of chairs, I could see the fear and sadness in the eyes of the people waiting to be decimated. They knew what was coming, knew that they were about to die. I felt a sudden surge of anger and determination. This had to end, and I had to be the one to end it. As Dr. Janet P. prepared the syringes, I tried to think of a plan. I knew that I couldn't just run away, that I had to find a way to stop her and bring down the system. And then, as I watched her administer the injections, something clicked in my mind. I remembered the small cabinet in the recovery room, the one that had held the supplies that had helped me escape. I waited until Dr. Janet P. was distracted, then made my move. I grabbed a syringe from the table and injected it into my own arm, feigning unconsciousness. Dr. Janet P. rushed over to me, checking my pulse and breathing. But as she did, I reached for the small vial of liquid that I had stashed in my pocket. With a quick motion, I splashed the liquid in her face, blinding her temporarily. I took advantage of the moment and ran towards the door, trying to escape. But as I reached the exit, I was met with a group of guards, armed and ready to stop me. I tried to fight them off, but there were too many of them, and they soon overpowered me. As I lay on the ground, surrounded by guards, I felt a sudden sense of despair. I had failed, and there was no hope for me now. But then, something unexpected happened. Dr. Janet P. emerged from the decimation room, her face red and swollen from the liquid I had thrown in her face. She looked at me, her eyes filled with a strange mix of anger and admiration. "You're clever," she said. "I'll give you that." And then, to my surprise, she extended her hand. "Join me," she said. "Together, we can make this system even better. We can make a difference." I hesitated, unsure of what to do. But then, I remembered the faces of the people waiting to be decimated, and I knew that I couldn't give in to her. With a surge of determination, I pushed her hand away and stood up. "I'll never be a part of this," I said. "I'll never be a part of your twisted system." And then, I ran towards the guards, ready to fight for my freedom and for the freedom of everyone else who had been trapped in this nightmare.